free. I was born to be 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 free.
Hi everyone, good morning. I welcome you all to the AI conference as part of the flagship startup event of Hong Kong, Start Me Up HK 2021. It's a Monday morning, everyone's busy, yet so many of you are here. So first of all, I'd like to thank all of you for taking out time for us. India is going through massive problems right now. We had moderators drop last minute. So many of our team members, family, friends are affected due to COVID. But India is known for its resilience. Entrepreneurial spirit comes naturally to us and we thrive out of it. And finally, the show must go on, and the show is nothing without its audience. So again, I'm grateful to all of you who were able to make it for the event. And before we move on to the main event, I'd like to tell you a little about IoT and what we do. So we generally work towards connecting India globally in the AI space, and we focus on premium talent, premium startups, and latest technologies. So do support us by joining more such activities and really give us a like on our pages. So let's start with the event you all have been waiting for, the AI conference. And to begin with, we have an interview with the head of Start Me Up HK Jain to give you an all-round perspective about the purpose of this event. Start Me Up HK lead. She's the one who runs the entire event. So, first of all, thanks for taking out time, at least for this interview, for 5 questions, right? So,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, and also thanks a lot for choosing IoT, for India and also for representing AI. So thanks for choosing us for those two. And thanks a lot for giving the IoT that kind of recognition there. Uh, yes. All right. So I think specific to the Indian audience, I would just like to ask you 2 questions. Right, and then I think that'll just help the Indian audience get a better perspective of what Start Me Up HK is all about and what exactly are we trying to do there. Right. So I think first of all, to begin with, as a head of Start Me Up HK, what you think about the Indian startup ecosystem?
Well, I mean, what can I say? There just seems to be so few words that can describe the Indian startup ecosystem, and of course you will know better than I, but from where I sit here in Hong Kong, the Indian startup ecosystem is phenomenal. I mean, you've got the numbers, you've got, you are currently ranked number 3 globally after the US and China in terms of the unicorn kind of creation. I think the unicorn creation, while it's not a metric that is used by everyone, I think just seems to give an indication to people outside of that ecosystem, an idea of what's happening in that ecosystem. And the fact that you've got something, I think 41 unicorns, I think it's absolutely phenomenal. And it obviously speaks to the fact that India has a very vibrant startup ecosystem. We already know that there's a collaboration on many levels, and especially an investment between Chinese investors into some of the really strong companies that's been happening in India. And we wanted to participate in that. We wanted to highlight the potential opportunities and collaboration that can be done between Hong Kong and India, and hopefully to also, tell you a little bit more about what's happening here in Hong Kong as well, and the kind of opportunities that you can potentially tap into. And that's why, we were really happy to have you guys on board. We just think you are, a good conduit in terms of allowing us to showcase at least some of the things that are happening here in the region. And also you can tell us a little bit more about, your respective space and the kind of challenges that you're coming up against. As for AI, I mean, AI is pervasive within the technology industry. It's used, in so many different types of startup companies. We don't even split a separate kind of topic these days on AI when we are talking about separate industries, just because it's being used in fintech, it's being used in e-commerce, it's being used in, SaaS kind of platforms. I mean, it is so hugely pervasive. But even though it is so pervasive, we're finding that not many people really understand the ins and outs of this. So when you actually submitted your proposal to us to say, you want to make it easier for people to understand, to demystify AI to a certain extent, and then follow that on with telling people how you can potentially, create a business with it, it was something that we wanted to embrace actually. So thank you for joining us in the Startup Hong Kong Festival this year.
Thanks a lot, Jen. I think you just put across everything. My next question was around AI and then what exactly Start Me Up HK's goal is. But I think you've already put that really, really well. So I think mainly just to be more specific for the Indian audience, if we can just talk about is there anything specific that the Indian ecosystem, founders in the Indian ecosystem should know about Hong Kong?
Sure. I think, for people in India who've never been to Hong Kong, they probably just hear about Hong Kong in the media, and it's usually, Hong Kong is listed as one of the world's financial centers. It's very densely packed, and it's, lots of people in very small spaces. it is that, but there's also a lot more than that. I think as an ecosystem, Hong Kong has a population of 7.2 million people. So as a city, it's a pretty large city, but as an individual kind of market, it's actually not so big that it gets overwhelming, but big enough for you to actually test and prototype a lot of your ideas to see whether that works for the Asian market in general. Now, I say Asia, I mean, we are talking about lots of very separate kind of markets, but we do find that Hong Kong, being in the center of Asia, both in a geographic sense, within 4 hours flight, for example, we can reach the majority of the cities within Asia, but also within the context of the fact that Hong Kong is, a regional kind of headquarter and a regional office for many large companies, and we also have a lot of indigenous kind of companies as well, local conglomerates and local companies that have been incredibly successful. And we wanted to tell people in India, if you are looking to potentially scale, so if you're a mid-stage kind of scale up, and you are looking to tap into the opportunities within Asia, maybe Greater China as well, it's Hong Kong has everything. I mean, in terms of funding, for example, we are one of the world's financial centers, so we do have the different types of funding available to help mid-stage companies to really scale in a big way. For example, between 2019 and 2020, there was about 2.45 billion US dollars invested into tech startups. And, for a small kind of geographic market, that is a very high percentage. So the funding is there. And of course, we have one of the most active and the biggest IPO stock exchange in the world as well. So for companies that are slowly growing through and wanting to really sort of take it to the next kind of level, they can get those Series A, B, C, D kind of opportunities here in Hong Kong, and then afterwards you can actually list through the stock exchange to really become a kind of large international corporation. So that was one thing I wanted to say. The other things I feel that's really important that Hong Kong offers is twofold. One is on the access to markets, and then the third one is actually access to talent. So in terms of access to market, I already mentioned that Hong Kong is great for a test bed to actually refine the concepts and your products and services for the different places within Asia, just because we are so incredibly international here. But just on our doorstep, this is something that you'll probably hear more and more about, is what we call the Greater Bay Area, a part of southern China with 7 cities plus Hong Kong and Macau collectively listed as the Greater Bay Area, which is going to be, frankly, a too big a business opportunity to ignore. It's a population of 70-something million people, a very sophisticated audience right on our doorstep. So you can actually get to different cities within the Greater Bay Area within a kind of 1 hour of traveling time. The actual, if you get on the high-speed rail, you're only talking about 15 minutes from the center of Hong Kong to Shenzhen. So, that kind of network is there. And thirdly, in terms of this talent, we have 5 of the world's, top 100 US ranked universities here, which are producing great talent, but we also augment that with fast-track visas for people with the relevant tech experience to get visas in a short time as 2 weeks. So I just think there is a lot of opportunity here in Hong Kong, and I just wanted to share some of that with these your fantastic Indian scale-ups who are looking to basically expand to other regional markets.
All right, thanks a lot for that again. Okay, that was Jane. Thanks, Jane, for setting the tone. And I'd like to specifically thank the LinkedIn audience. We have a lot of people watching it over LinkedIn. So thank you, do stay tuned. And not to keep you waiting any further, we have all our panelists on stage. And I would like to hand it over to our moderator for panel 1.
Thank you so much, Sejal. Very real welcome to all of you here. And I say the word real because even though the intelligence that we are going to talk about today is artificial, but this event, the intention behind it and the entire panel is very much real and natural and real as it gets. I am Ismail Akbani and I'm going to be moderating the panel today. I work with Srinivasan Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation in Pune, India. We are a technology business incubator where we support early stage startups, especially the technology startups in the domains of healthcare, nanotechnology, and of course, artificial intelligence as well. Currently, we are working with 20 plus startups at the incubation center. So before we go ahead, I really wanted to take the honor and privilege of introducing our esteemed panel members today. But then my natural intelligence popped up and said, we got such a diverse and amazing panel over here. And so rather than me trying to attempt to read their bio profiles at the risk of sounding like a robot who is here for audition of a Transformer movie, I would rather let the panel members introduce themselves. And so I will invite them to introduce them one by one. To start with, we have with us Dr. Hemang Shah, who is the India engineering lead at Qualcomm with amazing IP experience. Dr. Shah, please.
Thank you, Ismail. And believe me, you're not robotic at all. It's actually a great, AM this morning. Actually, I think all of our conferences should start this early in the morning, right? There's a lot of natural energy that we all have. So I am Dr. Hemang Shah. I work for Qualcomm. Specifically, I work on our startup programs in India, chiefly with what you would call as your IoT startups, and we have incubated a number of them. I also have some experience on IP strategy, and we've helped startups in India be more IP aware. They've treated IP as a core aspect of their business strategy, and I'll be happy to share some of my insights around that. So thank you all for having me here.
Thank you so much. Let's move on to our next panelist who is joining us all the way from US, Mr. Satya Mallick.
Hi, my name is Satya Mallick, and I am the CEO of OpenCV.org. Some of you may know that OpenCV is the biggest computer vision library in the world, and OpenCV.org is the foundation that manages the library. That's about it. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to see all our panelists as such amazing experts at the 60-second pitch, right? So that's what we call in the startup ecosystem. And it's good as a moderator, we're always happy when things happen in a very concise manner. Let's move on to Mr. Vinayak Hegde, who is the CTO in residence for Microsoft for Startups.
Hi everyone, my name is Vinayak Hegde. I currently work as a CTO in residence at Microsoft for Startups, which is a Microsoft's global team that helps startups around the world. So I help startups with technology and product strategy across the board. So I work with the CXOs to kind of scale their systems and solve their technology problems. Prior to Microsoft, I have a couple of decades of experience working with various startups, including India's first unicorn in Mobi, where I built out a data stack there. And before joining Microsoft a couple of years back, I was a CTO for Zuka, which is Sequoia-funded smart mobility company. Yeah, great to have
Thank
all
you
of
so
you.
much. Thank you so much, Vinayak, for that. And let's move on to the next speaker, Mr. Srikanth Srinivasan, who is the global head for retail and consumer goods at Tech Mahindra.
Hey, thanks, Ismail. Thanks for this opportunity. Looking at the green screen behind you, I was hoping to see some graphics pop out of it if you're doing some video editing there. But very excited to be here. My name is Srikanth. I lead the retail and CPG vertical for Tech Mahindra. So I'm here on my personal capacity today. As you all know, retail CPG is probably the hotbed for innovations like IoT and AI, and whatever new comes into the market gets tried and tested in the retail CPG world. So I'm hoping to learn a lot from you and also share what I think about AI in this space. So excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Srikanth. It's good to see a panelist coming up and right in the beginning saying that I am also here to learn. That speaks a lot. And about the green screen, I wanted to play some video, but then I thought next time Nikhil won't call me, he would say, no, all the attention goes on your background screen, so I don't want to do as a moderator the next time. So I avoided that temptation. And with that note, let's move on to our very own Nikhil Bhaskaran, who is the founder and CEO of ShunyaOS and has had experience of running startups in India as well as China. Nikhil, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry. So yeah, thank you for giving me the chance. And as in, I think among all the biggies here, everyone's so big. I mean, I'm representing startups and the emerging startup founders who are coming into the AI space. So I'll try to be the voice of all emerging technology and emerging startups in the space. Yes, for my experience, I've worked in China for 8 years, which is where I got the vision that AI is going to be really big. Way back in 3 years back, already got into it, and then I got into AI on Edge, which is my focus area right now. We do AI on Edge in computer vision. That's me at ShunyaOS. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nikhil. Once again, thanks and a special gratitude to all the panelists for being here, and even thanks to all the audience who are over here right in this session and over LinkedIn for joining us early morning, that too on a Monday, and a topic like artificial intelligence, which of course is very exciting. So moving forward, the theme for the session, as we know, is about demystifying artificial intelligence, talking about the trends, having a look, a glimpse into the future. So we'll talk about that. We'll also discuss in the later part, we'll also talk about how various sectors like the government and business and startups should be looking at this AI wave and how they should be preparing themselves. So I'm going to be throwing questions at the panelists, which by far is my favorite hobby because I'm also an educator and faculty, so I love throwing questions at people. But then that also means that I like answers to be in a very short 60 to 90-second pitch, which I'm happy that our panelists have already demonstrated that ability, because I'm feeling very greedy this morning and I want to throw in as many questions as I can. In fact, I have so many questions I can run the panel the entire day. So with that, I'm going to start asking questions. I would request everybody to keep their questions answers in 1.5 minutes, 90 seconds or so that everybody gets a chance to speak and we can cover as many questions as we can. So let's get to business and talk about the first question that talks about the theme, demystifying AI. So we have a lot of people here who are not from tech background, not from the AI background, and there is so much of misconception, so many myths around there about artificial intelligence when we talk about. So I would like the panelists to, in a brief, first start by helping us understand, people like me who are non-AI people, what exactly is AI? And I would like to start with Dr. Hemang Shah. So you can go to first.
So to me, it's really hard to define or pinpoint, what AI is. Well, there is, as the name suggests, literally it's artificial intelligence, meaning there is something, which humans have created, right? And that is smart enough to evolve on its own and really augment our understanding of things, meaning it contributes to our intelligence. So the way I have tried to really understand it is by looking at how it is being practiced. I've been an experimentalist, and that's the easiest way for me to approach things. So we all know that there are devices that we all are using, and they are they analyze a lot of information. And what we are seeing in terms of AI is that they take it up to the next level, meaning they have some ability to evolve on their own, to determine some understanding of their own, and now they are providing suggestions, but eventually it can get to a point where they can hopefully make a lot more informed decisions for us. What AI also is, it's a very fast evolving field. About 2 months ago, I started reading something, understanding something, which today I know is outdated. So it's moving at such a fast pace where I'm like, I just don't know how to keep up or what's the right way to keep up with this thing, except by being more and more immersed in it. But I'll let my other panelists, expound on this thing.
Thank you so much. So while it's fascinating, it's also a challenge. And all of us over here on this panel, be it the speakers, be it the audience, we are all challenge-loving people. So I'm happy that you brought that point in. Let's move on to Satya Mallick, because he's joining from US. We have heard from India. Let's hear from US about what you mean by AI.
Yeah, so I mean, again, it's a very fuzzy term, but what it means is the ability of machines or computers to reason like humans. So that's why it's artificial, because we built it. Humans built it, and intelligence because we wanted to reason and think like humans. But it's a very fuzzy term. It doesn't say how to do it. It just says, make this machine for me. So the right way to think about it, if you think about AI in terms of other concepts, then it becomes more clear. For example, for the longest time, we thought that we could actually build up rules-based systems for solving the AI problem, right? We could come up with all these rules, but then we found out that the system completely explodes. You cannot create that many rules for solving AI. So then we came up with this idea of learning from data. And when we learn from data, that field is called machine learning, right? The machine is learning from data instead of we crafting rules explicitly. So that's the difference between, AI is this fuzzy term which doesn't tell you how exactly to do it. But when we come to machine learning, it is the branch of AI that focuses on learning from data automatically. And then, there are sub branches like computer vision, etc. But let me just let other panelists respond.
Thank you so much. So we heard from two experts who are more leaning towards the technology side. I would like to move towards the business side now. So I would like to go to Mr. Srikanth and ask him to share his views about, especially if in the business context, what does AI mean for him?
Thanks, Ismail. I think our friends have covered the classical definition of AI. To me, any technology, when we as humans invent technology, we invent it so that it makes our lives easier. And as we use it more and more in connection with other technologies that are also growing in the space, the technology matures and it is able to offer more out of it. Right? So for me, AI is something that at this point is kind of the workhorse for all the things that we can do, sorting through large amount of data, making sense of the information superhighway that is throwing out all this information at one time, and slowly as it evolves, and it is still evolving. I mean, no technology is perfect, but as it evolves, how it can take greater decisions for us and do it in a way that is equal or better than how a human person would think about the same thing. So tomorrow, would we let AI do an open heart surgery, or would we let AI fly a plane without pilots? Those are the levels that it can go, but will it go and will we let it go is the question that we'll have to wait and see. So that's my take on it.
Great. Thank you so much for reminding all of us of the great Shakespeare in the morning, to be or not to be, that is the question. Let's move on. We heard about business. Let's talk about startups, because we are here in this conference. Startups can never be left behind. So let's move on to Vinayak over here and listen from him what he thinks AI is all about.
So AI is basically a way of augmenting, I would say, human cognition. So what I mean by cognition is also how we interpret the world and how we sense the world. So if you look at the branches of AI, you have vision, you have sound and speech, you have natural language processing, right? And you have all of these different capabilities that we use our senses to sense the world. Now technology is an ever-moving kind of target, right? Like at least two of the panelists are wearing specs. Now this is also an augmentation of our capability, right? And we just take it for, actually there are three now. So so this technology we take for granted, right? So that is what we are seeing, right? When it was new and we had like these different technologies first come in, right? It was very novel, but we don't even think about it. But so similarly, what we're seeing is AI is actually becoming like a part of a fabric of building software. And because computers and chips are everywhere, right? We have IoT on the edge, and we have mobile phones in our pockets that are much more powerful than anything we had on the desktop maybe like 10 years back. So all of this is actually adding to a massive, I would say, a way substrate layer, which is actually becoming good at sensing and augmenting human ability. And that is what AI is. And startups definitely are kind of adding to that and are at the forefront of that, in looking at different applications, whether it is like finance, healthcare. Sometimes you don't even know that there is AI behind, and that is fascinating, right? Because what was in some sense done by human is now slowly getting done by machine, at least much of the mundane tasks. And we'll talk about these applications as we go on.
Interesting. Thank you so much. Let's move on to the last expert over here, who very humbly and very nicely claims not to be an expert, but all of us know that's far from the truth. So, Nikhil, if you would come in and share your opinion.
Okay. Thanks. I'll try to demystify this, which is a kind of complex piece. Honestly speaking, what is happening is we are going from, this is a huge shift. In the past, we have had programming, but all programming was human logic. Like some programmer used to put his logic into the computer. And then you feed it data and then it gives you output. So the rules were defined by humans, or the logic was defined. What is changing in the AI space is that you don't define the rule. You actually give it historical data. You give it a lot of data and AI gives you the logic, and that's how humans also do it. If you realize that a lot of things that we have done over and over, you don't have to think. It just happens. That's because the internal logic is developed and the pathway is built. So what we're doing is we're copying a part of human working style. The way our natural intelligence works, a fragment of it is actually now possible in artificial intelligence. And humans are much more efficient. Human brain operates at 20 watts of power with so much different lobes and so many calculations that you can do really fast. The way you're doing it as a moderator, you're responding. These are not situations that you've dealt with, but you're so fast at them. But everyone becomes better as they do it more and more. Exactly the same way, you have a brain which initially does not know anything. The more data you give it, the more it learns from it. That is why data is becoming so essential. Historical data and how things, the more data you have, the more intelligent machine you can create. So this is the fundamental shift that is happening, that today you don't have to write the rules as a programmer. AI will figure out from the data, oh, this is the pattern that is happening. Every time this input happens, this is the output that happens. Let me try to say this, and then it corrects itself. So the more it gets exposed, the more it gets smarter. But without instilling fear in people, it's still a fragment of what humans can do. But what it means is, even just by doing a fragment of what humans can do, it can unlock so much business value. So you understand the value of humans, that we are actually meant to do a lot more. Our brains are much more capable. I'll just leave you with that.
Great. Thank you for leaving us on a cliffhanger and keeping us curious. That's a smart move to make, actually, I know. And so let's move on to the next question. Since we have talked about AI and we've tried to understand, and some very amazing, very simplified definitions. I wouldn't call them definitions, but rather explanations about what AI is. The next question comes in, and that directly relates to the very reason we are doing this conference, right? Why is it important for people who are not directly connected to AI? So laymen like me, business people who are not into AI, and not into technical businesses, governments and academics all over the world. Why is it important for people like us to be aware of the latest developments and trends in AI, and what should be looking forward to in the times to come? And I would like to start this with Mr. Srikanth again.
Hey, thanks. So your question is, what does a layman need to know about AI, right? Or what does everyone need to know about AI?
Yeah. So what and why is it so important for all of us to know that?
Yeah, so it's as I said in my previous answer, it is evolution, and evolution of any technology is the maturity and the benefits of the technology is defined by how well it helps us back. So as a common man, I think the use of AI is already being seen in many places. Like if you're watching Netflix, there is an AI algorithm that is deciding what movies to suggest to you. If you're doing bank transactions, there is a lot of chatbot enabled responses that you see. So AI is already there in our lives. The only thing to be aware of is how, or from the people who are developing AI, to see how this technology can provide more benefits and make life easier for people. How can it make things more efficient? Particularly if you think in India, in the government sector, how can things become more organized and more efficient? In the justice system, the law system, how things can be more organized, banking, e-commerce, personal lifestyle, all these areas are where AI can play a big role. And ultimately for the layman or for a person who is not so much technical in nature, all it matters is how their lives can be more smooth and how they don't have to or don't need to spend time on menial tasks and focus on more value-adding tasks, letting AI and other technologies take care of their daily business. So that's where I think the biggest impact for a common person is there. But from a point of view of the technologies and the developers who are working on it, what they need to keep in mind is whenever they develop a technology, don't develop it for the sake of developing it, but always connect it to what output or what benefits it will deliver to the common man. So I think if that bridge is crossed in time, I think things will be more beneficial as far as AI is concerned. I'll still limit my time to 90 seconds as you told earlier.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to have such a nice bunch of panelists over here who are so, what you can say, so nice in following the instructions. And thanks for the last part. I really liked it when you talk about connecting it to technology for the sake, not just for the sake of technology, but actually there has to be some use. I think all of us need to keep that in mind. And one special thing that I'm worried now is all this while I used to think that it's I who decides what I watch on Netflix. Now I know it's Netflix who decide what I watch on Netflix. So that's a good insight for, I guess, a lot of people like me. Let's move on to Satya again, because you've been doing a lot of work on the tech side in AI. So why do you think that all that you are doing is important, and why people should be keeping a track of it?
Right. So one of the big names in artificial intelligence is Professor Andrew Ng, and one of the quotes that I really like that he uses is AI is like electricity, right? And what does it mean? AI is like electricity. When electricity was invented, the very first application was lighting, right? They lit up houses and all the street lights, etc. But that was just the beginning. After that, electricity transformed multiple industries, right? We started with lighting, obviously. Then we moved on to manufacturing, agriculture, medicine, everywhere, right? Electricity basically is the energy that we use pretty much everywhere. And that's exactly the impact of AI will also have. We will see that it is going to transform multiple industries, starting from agriculture, from manufacturing, from even biomedical sciences, all kinds of industry, automotive, autonomous driving, everywhere. For example, computer vision, which is my specialty. Wherever you have a camera, it will become a smart camera. Now think about the possibilities. You have a camera in your laptop, you have a camera on your phone, you have a camera on the manufacturing lines, you have cameras on the street, everywhere. So the line to remember is that AI is like electricity. It is going to transform all aspects of our life. The second thing I want to mention is a lot of people here who are probably programmers. They have some programming background, etc. At some point, engineers, right, without programming background were unemployable, because now you assume that every engineer has programming experience. The same thing will happen to programmers in about 5 years. If you do not have a background in AI, you will be unemployable, because now it's become synonymous with programming. You need to have some expertise, some concepts of AI. So that's, I'll leave it to other panelists to complete all other thoughts.
Thank you so much for that wonderful insight, and special thank you, because I was planning on using that very code in the latter part of the session. So thank you for robbing me of that opportunity to use that. And let me move on to Nikhil now, and let's hear to what he has to say, because he keeps doing AI all the time. All the breakfast, lunch, dinner, all is about AI. So let's hear what he has to talk about.
Oh, I don't know. You don't have to push me so hard, but yeah, let me try. So I think the question is about the high-level trends and what should government and people in general do. People in general should realize that AI is doing what humans can do slowly, but it's doing in pieces. Like computer vision is anything that the eye and human brain can do together. Every time you see something and you take a decision, and if it's a basic thing that you're doing, like you're just reading documents, you're sorting stuff, or you're deciding, oh, I know this person, I should let him in, I should not let him in. These kind of things would be moved into a device. Now, what is the advantage of it? Like there are doctors who take a decision looking at a report, say he's seeing a cancer report and he's making a decision, this is cancer cell versus this is not. Now to create such a human in traditional way would take 10 years of experience. He needs to see so much more. And that's when he's able to take a confirmed call that yes, this is cancer. But now what that means is now we have seen in the pandemic that this leads to shortage, excessive shortage. We don't have IQ so much easily available because it takes a lot of time for human IQ, good IQ to be developed. Now, if you can do the same thing on a machine, you feed it all the data and you teach the machine to detect cancer, you can make multiple copies of it. And healthcare can reach even remote places. For basic decision making, now you don't need a doctor. So this is the power of AI that people should realize. A lot of even which we today think is high IQ stuff would get copied into the machines and get replicated and be available in mass for people. So it's empowering a lot of humanity, people who did not have access. Of course, it can be misused also, a little like Netflix, where you try to manipulate the other person's brain, but that's one part of it. But there's also a lot of good use. And any technology, like someone said, electricity is powerful. You can also give shocks to people. But few people do that. Largely, I believe in humanity still positively, because almost all technology in the end has been more positive. Even the internet, everything could have been misused massively, but largely it seems humans still have sanity. We can't predict the future yet, but it will go good. This is the large impact. What government should know? Governments are at very high level. They should understand the potential of this technology, that how much wealth can these new technologies generate. So they should empower, facilitate these innovators in each of those countries and bring more of these people. So because it will unlock so much value for their countries. So at government, I think high level, they should only facilitate policies. For business owners, they should be on their feet and see what technologies would help their business move to the next level. Because if they miss something, your competitor is going to take that technology and move fast. So you need to be on the feet and looking at what is coming in my domain, in retail or maybe in any space. And for the academics, obviously, you depend on the academics to provide the fuel, the talent. Artificial intelligence finally depends on human intelligence, right? You still need those intelligent people to push it forward, and that depends on the academics. So academics has to pace up and introduce these courses and provide talent pool to the rest of all. That's what I would say. I think I covered some part of it.
Thank you so much for that brief and yet comprehensive sharing, Nikhil. Since we are in some way, directly or indirectly through Backdoor channel, we are already ventured into the realm of trends, and so I want to again take this a little bit, move this a little further, and expect the panelists to use whatever superpowers you guys have to take us through a time travel machine into the near future and help us paint the picture of the world how it would be in 5 to 10 years down the line. And I want to move on to Dr. Hemang, who has a lot of experience in IP as well. And specifically, I would like you to talk about what kind of patents and IP do you foresee being generated in the time to come. And a sub question to that would be, do you see AI playing a role in generation of IP? Would we expect AI to be coming up with patent ideas and IPs in future?
Sure. So before I expand on this, disclaimer, right? That these are my individual and personal thoughts. Okay, so it's a very interesting landscape, and let me take you back before going into the future. Let me just take a brief step back, say 5 years ago. So I mainly started working with the Indian, I would say, hardware startup ecosystem, say 5 years back, and that's where a number of devices that people were making, they were just going to be based on what they had kind of hard programmed the devices to. Right? They had very specific things. Sensors were fed into their device. They analyzed and they gave very known outputs. Think of it as known lookup tables, essentially. But now that 5 years ahead, a number of them are adding a lot of AI to it. So let me expand this by giving one example. So early on, when you had a medtech device, that they would take specific images, and based on specific captures, they would give known outputs. Today, they are adapting those algorithms on the fly, and they're giving information with regards to whether a wound is healing or not. They're giving doctors that ability. So they're not making very hard outputs, but they are really adding to the value that a doctor is perceiving. They're limiting a lot of time that, let's say, would be spent in a lab culture analysis. Things that would have taken, say, 3 days or so before a patient got to know the result is now being sped up to, let's say, maybe max to max 1 hour. And now it's easy to see how this can extend further, right? That it's not just one wound, it can be maybe other kinds of diseases that this device can really give a lot of. What this also will do is that it removes the barrier to meeting a high specialist doctor in a specific location. This device could be anywhere, right? So the ability for such devices is going to be far greater. And I just gave one example. Now you can extend this to all the other areas that my co-panelists have mentioned. Like this can be you can have similar advances in the field of finance, in the field of let's say education. And so a fair amount of intellectual property is going to be created. It is going to happen because, to me, the fundamental basis of creating innovations is problems. And we are going to solve a whole lot of problems. And naturally, there'll be very different takes on how you'll solve those problems. And hence, you'll have a great number of innovations which will come out of those. And further down, they'll manifest in different types of IP. Of course, you have patents, you have copyrights, you'll have industrial designs, and so on. You did ask a very interesting question with regards to how AI can be a creator, and there is, I won't say there's a hard answer on that. I think it's something that we are going to learn, but I think due to the time constraints, if you want, I can expand on this a bit later on. But very briefly, it's something that everyone or every country is going to watch out for. We're going to have interesting discussions and interesting outcomes. We are not there where I can say definitely that, okay, here is what is going to be with, let's say, on how an AI technology is going to be a creator. Will it be called a creator or will it be called an augmenter? We're not there yet, in my opinion.
Thank you so much, and we'll surely come back to the IP part again, because that's something I'm personally very curious as well, and I'm sure a lot of the audience here would be. Let's move on to the startup perspective over here, and I would like to bring in Vinayak again and hear from him that what kind of a trend and themes do you see in the startups that are being a part of Microsoft for Startups, and especially in what has been the trend in the past, and where do you see that trend in the coming next few years?
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about that, but I also wanted to share my thoughts on the earlier question. So you asked, like, for example, what should the layman care about in terms of AI? So I will take probably a slightly contrarian view, maybe some of the other panelists, and I would say that maybe the layman should not even care about AI. Right? What the layman actually cares about is that whatever he's trying to get done becomes faster, better, or cheaper, and AI is just one means of, in some sense, of reaching that. Right? So technology is best when it is not kind of exposed to the real world. A great example of this is think about all of the technology that goes into a internal combustion engine on a car, right? But when we think about a car, we think about how we can use, how we can do. I mean, again, in the time of COVID, we can't do as many data, but all we have is like the interface, right? We have an accelerator, we have a brake, and we have the clutch, and obviously we have the steering wheel, and it's that simple. And technology should be that simple. Also, there were some references made to, I would say, electricity, right? And also I see a lot of references to data in terms of oil. But where I think AI is very different is electricity didn't make a lot of decisions, right? It was in some sense a dumb technology. And when I say dumb, is that you turn on the switch and either the fan works or the electricity comes on or the computer works, right? It's kind of non-descriptive, but AI is not like that, right? What it does is some of, I would say, as I said in the earlier question, it automates human cognition. And what that means is humans have biases, and the danger that we have is that all of those biases would get encoded in the software itself, right? Because they may be they're already there in the underlying data, and it has come up in so many ways, right? For example, dark-skinned people may not be recognized well in computer vision, or some other bias in terms of the way, like for example, let's say in the automotive sector, if it's trained in the US and once probably get a car to India, and this is something that I have personally seen and experienced, right? When I used to work at a startup earlier, I said a Zoom car, right? We used to see that whenever we calibrated the sensors to the US standards, it never worked in India, because in India, people would drive very close to each other, and it would keep on, the collision detection would keep on going, right? So I think we need to understand what are the limits and what are the dangers of AI as well. Though we talk largely as technologists about the positive sides, I think when we build technology, we need to look at the downside. We need to think about responsible AI or the fairness, accountability, and transparency. Coming back to the initial question, sorry, I'm taking a little bit of time, but I just wanted to kind of give a counterpoint as well, because that was not covered. So AI has become very pervasive, right?
Like, yeah, it's okay. Once in a while, you're allowed to take more time than allotted.
Thank you so much. So AI is everywhere, right? For example, we have seen that AI is now actually figuring out, how to make music more melodious, or identifying for forgery in painting, and also doing painting itself. What a lot of people may not also know, that AI is actually getting used in even figuring out what kind of scripts and what kind of plot twists should be seen in the movie, right? Most people might know that Netflix does recommendation, but do you also know the kind of storylines that would be appealing to people is also decided by AI? So they get fed a lot of plot twists, right? Like what should the protagonist do, and that is today getting developed by AI. If you look at healthcare, all kinds of detection, whether it is like cancer cell detection and augmenting the ability of physicians, if you see on an everyday basis, right? What we do not think of AI, again, as multiple panelists have said, it's a constantly shifting landscape, right? Fraud detection is now kind of there everywhere. It is in some sense a statistical or probabilistic analytical tool, right? And that uses AI itself. So there are very non-obvious ways in which AI can use the most fascinating. I'm interested in history other than technology. The most fascinating use of AI and technology that I've seen is the whole of Central America was actually scanned using LIDAR, and actually like vegetation penetrating LIDAR, and they basically figured out that there were complete cities that were actually lying under the soil or the vegetation, and that was done using combination of LIDAR mapping and AI. And so even in fields that you typically won't think of AI, like archaeology or music or movie making, AI has become so pervasive. It's just that we do not know about it, and which is where I talked about my initial point, is that the end user does not care, because what he or she sees is faster, better, cheaper, things that they could not do before, and that's what they should care about. But as I give, couple of examples, I can give more examples, but like things like archaeology, for example, or deep sea exploration, or and also like probably I would say slightly more mundane applications, like detecting forgery or fraud detection. So AI is already here in that sense, and then startups are at the forefront in each of these particular use cases. So I won't say there's a trend as such, but kind of AI is getting embedded and used every single kind of application that is out there and augmenting it. Sorry, I took a lot of time, but wanted to make some points. Thanks for giving me the time.
Thank you for taking those extra few seconds, because towards the end, actually, my internet went off, so I was off this. And so while you're speaking, that kind of balance, otherwise people would have felt my absence. You did not let them miss me. Thanks for that. Let's move on to again Mr. Srikanth back, and I want to hear specifically about what do you think about the role AI is going to play, because all of us are consumers over here. So what role is going to specifically play in the consumer goods domain, and how do you foresee that landscape unfolding?
Okay. ever since COVID happened, I am a little apprehensive and suspicious of all the so-called futurists. And
is it my internet again, or is Srikanth having some issues with his side?
Hello, can you hear me? Hello.
Yeah, I can hear him. Okay.
Okay.
I can't hear him.
I'll keep going. Just check your internet again as well. Okay. So as I said, ever since COVID happened, I'm a little wary of futurists and astrologers and people who predict the future. But instead of predicting the future, I think what is more important to understand what are those things that will indicate how the future is going to be, rather than what the future will actually be. So AI has been around for a long time, maybe decades now, but why is AI becoming a hot topic in the last 15, 10, 5 years, right? It's talked everywhere now. It's because the other peripheral technologies are also developing along with AI, and it gives a reason for one particular technology to thrive and offer more value than and in this collective environment, it is more beneficial. So as far as retail and CPG is concerned, I think AI is already playing a lot of role, mostly in the background, because there is a lot of this data analytics and the data usage, and how I should bring insights into the data that can be offered as a value back to the customers. I think a lot of work is being done in that area already with AI. A lot of customers that we talk to start with that because they see AI ML as a fancy thing, and they come and say, what are you guys doing with AI? What can we do for you? What can we do with that? So there are also a lot of applications also in the speech side of it, the text side of it, the image and video side of it, not just the numbers on the data side. But there is a lot to be done and a lot of things that are already happening. So what I see this or where I see this going is the confluence of all these things coming together. Not just AI alone working on these different aspects, but AI working with cloud, AI working with IoT, AI working with, say, something like RFID, for example, blockchain, for example. So all these technologies need to grow together, and when they grow together and work seamlessly, they will offer more value to the customer. Ultimately, for a user or for a consumer, it is again about making life more efficient, making life more easy, making transactions more seamless, making visibility more seamless, and things like that. If those things can keep happening and it keeps making the life better of consumers, I think the technology in the background is orchestrating and making that happen without really coming onto the front and dictating your lives. It is always there in the background, helping you make things better every day. So I think that's where it is going. I don't want to be very specific to say this will happen, because again, I am not a astrologer. I can't tell for sure. Maybe an XYZ technology comes out tomorrow and disrupts everything else. Who knows? We don't know about that. So fingers crossed. But ultimately, does it make the human condition better? Is the whole answer. What do you smile? Are you still there?
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that insightful. Now I want to shift my gears a little bit, and so we have somebody over here in the panel who is as much of an Indian as one can be. But then let's face the fact, he has spent 7 to 8 years in China, right? And my sources tell me that Nikhil still has some ties with the Chinese people. And I'm sure they're all purely business ties, nothing else to that. So I want to turn on to Nikhil and ask him that if you can let us know from whatever sources you got there, what is China doing these days in terms of AI? What's the state of growth and development of AI in China, and how does that stand when compared to the rest of the world?
Okay, thanks. I do have friends in China, and I closely value. I see both countries as my home. That's how much close I am to China. So what I see different in China and rest of the world is, this is just very high level. There are exceptions. US always increases the top side higher. They just go into the Mars, or they want to do the top side. While China comes ground up and tries to commoditize things. So I think on China, what I'm seeing in the trend is, and that's where my startup is also placed on the AI on edge, because I plan to sell to the Chinese, and that's my whole play. That AI would go down into chips. They would make specific dedicated chips for certain activities instead of just AI applications. They would be built into chips and commoditized. Like you have something that can recognize faces, just built into, scary technology. Sorry, I should have taken a better example. But yeah, any of these technologies would just go into a chip and get commoditized, and they'll bring down the cost. I'll give you an example of how differently things are. Like recently when I went to MIT, and the professor there is like really good, we went, and she was talking high level stuff what US is doing and how those chips are using, there's also analog technology that is being used to speed up the computation. Our brain also is more analog than digital. So these things are getting replicated. And she was telling, this is where US is, this is where Google is, and these kind of technologies. And actually sometimes feel that the rest of the world is not observing China as much it should, because there's a lot happening inside China. There is a friend of mine who has a $4 chip that does the exact thing. And it's just $4. They've commoditized it, but it's still not known to the rest of the world. So I think the world needs to see China more, because on the other side, on an everyday basis, a lot of Chinese do see what is happening in the US, and everything gets translated into Chinese. So that side is very aware of what's happening in the rest of the world. The rest of the world is not so aware of what's happening on a day-to-day basis inside China. So the high-level trend I see is they're extremely bullish about AI. Obviously the government has a good vision there, and they're trying to commoditize it, like into hardware. They're coming from the hardware side, then keeping it on the cloud. This is what I'm seeing at a very high level.
Thank you so much for the Nikhil. So now we heard of China. Let's hear about US. And so I want to move on to Satya over here and listen to his opinions about where does US stand in all this? What's the US doing?
Well, I just want to take a step back and say a little bit about, people who want to understand the dynamics between US, China in the AI space. There is an excellent book by Dr. Kai-Fu Lee, who was managing the AI division, who was managing Google China for a long time. And I think he is now a VC, an investor over there. So that book is, I think, called AI Superpowers. It tells about the dynamics between China and US. So the way US works is, we want to be at the cutting edge of things, right? We want to invent new things, and there's a lot of funding for a lot of, new ideas. And they want to go big, right, on various aspects of things like autonomous driving, etc. What has happened in the last few years with China is that they are extremely fast followers. Like in 2010, papers that were coming out of China, I was not 100% convinced, the results were accurate or not. I would treat them with a little bit of, caution that, I don't know whether this result would replicate or not. But 2020, they are producing, state-of-the-art results, right? They're going neck and neck with US as far as research is concerned, right? So the leap they're making is huge, and they have a huge advantage in terms of data, because Chinese companies are not just AI companies like software companies. Google's reach ends with software, right? Amazon is probably the only company in US which has reach in the physical domain also, because they ship products and they do things. But in China, there are many companies who go from software all the way to delivery of the product right to the household, and they have a lot of data. So in that sense, China is going to win the data game no matter what. So the only way US can keep have an edge over this real it's a very real competition from China is by innovating new algorithms and coming up with new techniques, right? I don't think US will ever win the data game with China. They are going to be very good at those things. So we are seeing the applications of AI being adopted very quickly in US, but then we are also seeing the same thing in China. Simple payment technologies, etc., they are being adopted much more quickly in China compared to in the US. So in that sense, it's good that US is taking the lead on AI, and Google employs 50% of all the AI engineers in the world. Take any government, combine all the governments, everything, Microsoft, all the big companies, and Google employs 50% of all the AI talent in the world, right? So, but that's the lead we have currently in US. But there is no reason to be complacent about it, because China is marching very fast right behind, and they have the advantage, the data advantage.
This is getting so interesting. Actually, I'm tempted to continue on this line of questions, but then I also have the clock on my wall, which, by the way, till now works without any AI as of now. So I'm aware of the time, but still I'm tempted to ask some question, because US dekha, China dekha, just like we talked about US, we talked about China. We have got 3 more experts from the Indian context. Any of you, Dr. Hemang or Vinayak or Srikanth, want to comment quickly on where does India stand in this entire AI wave?
I can quickly make a couple of comments about the startups I was seeing. So AI, so what has happened is, I think we have seen waves of innovation in India, right? And what we're seeing is the early shoots of what we call as deep tech startups in AI in India. For example, I'm working with a startup that actually analyzes video and figures out what is happening in the scene. Is it like an action scene? Is it like an emotional scene? Is it like something that is important to the plot? Who are the actors in the scene? And it actually analyzes and builds a timeline, and then it allows it to make editing really, really easy. On the other side, I am seeing for example, in other applications as well, right? Like, for example, another startup that I'm working with, what they're doing is that whenever a farmer comes in with the produce, what they've done is they have used IoT and AI on the edge. They've installed this AI-enabled cameras, and they kind of rate the produce, right, based on, in some sense, the external parameters, and the size, the quantity, the texture, and so many other parameters, and then it actually is tied to the pricing engine. And then let's say you're a big chip manufacturer or a ketchup manufacturer, right? Then you can actually rate the produce. We are seeing, in retail, for example, the way a planogram analysis, which is the science of figuring out, how things should be arranged in a particular rack and how far they should be, maybe at entrance or based on the layout. AI is getting used in that as well. We're seeing the things in logistics, right? Like, one of the most interesting things I've seen in logistics, again, honestly, it's mundane, but it speeds up things really fast. Like, for example, in codes, you have to fill in a lot of forms, right? So even when people fill in forms, it actually just recognizes using OCR what is there in the form and converts that into a JSON, which can then just be consumed by machines, right? So you just have to look at the manifest and then load. What else? I mean, there's tons of applications, right? So I think across the landscape, whether it's video, whether it's natural language processing. Another startup that I work with in India, again, helps in what was typically a very tedious process, right? So what they do is they go to the MCA website, which is the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, and all of the different filings that public and private companies do with MCA, with SEBI, and so many other sources. And they figure out, what should be the value of this company when M&A happens, right? Do they have litigation against them? What is the kind of IP they have? So basically, it gives a very 360-degree view. So that's what I'm saying, right? Traditionally, industries that you wouldn't think about in terms of AI are also getting digitized, and India is also actually going far, but it is not, in some sense, I would say, at least at this point, very technology-led like the US, or like the hardware-led or commoditized like the US, looking more at from an application space. And that is, I think, domain expertise and application of AI is what we're essentially looking at. And it's happening across a range of sectors.
Thank you so much for bringing that Indian context as well in the picture. So yeah, and now we also have some people here in the audience belong to different sectors, and for the sake of their interest and their curiosity, I want to change the gears a little bit over here again and move on to some sector specific discussion. So I would like to move on to Nikhil again and want to have his opinions on how do you think the governments across the world can leverage on this AI wave, and what should they be doing to get on the right side of this entire thing?
Okay, that's a tough one on me because I'm not sure how much I understand governments, but largely again, high level governments should only be facilitators of innovation, because people, I mean, generally the masses, obviously, there's everything available in the country. Your job is to just bring together people, like all these good institutes, all of them do this stuff. Your job is to attract a lot of smart people and give them the environment to create. They themselves will create all the good stuff. So you facilitate innovation by giving them tax soaps, by giving them some advantages to build the entire, obviously they control the environment, right? And everyone is a product of the environment. So you give them a very good environment. And also, I think on one go, I also like that if governments keep the focus that the empowerment angle of people also happen, and then startups don't just, and most of the businesses just don't get into pure profiteering. There's nothing wrong at it, because profit is also delivered by only doing good to people. But also make sure that some of the marginalized is also getting benefit by incentivizing it a little more to go into that segment. This is what I think governments can do. So in summary, bring in innovators, drive the high-level agenda, which of our areas in the country needs growth, and drive innovation by incentivizing them correctly in those domains, and then the people will drive it themselves, is what I think. Just a view.
Thank you so much. I would like to carry forward with the same question and put the ball in the court of Dr. Shah over here, and I would like to hear his thoughts.
Sure. So I'll build on what Nikhil just mentioned, right? So the governments, so at least from my perspective with regards to startups and the visibility that I have with a lot of the government initiatives, it's actually a very encouraging ecosystem in India. I mean, if you look at, for example, the startup IP policies, right? The incentives that they've made available for startups to make it easy for them to invent their work in India, to file, say, patent applications or trademark applications. There are a lot of funding sources available if they want to even take that filing and take it internationally. So the government has a lot of these initiatives. I think what tends to happen is that a lot of the folks are unaware about them. And the thing is, these details are actually there on a lot of the government websites. It does require a fair bit of push and make people aware about these things. For example, we have indiaai.org. I mean, I think they're building a lot of good material out there. I'm just not sure how many people are actually being familiar with everything that is published out there, right? So that's one aspect. The other aspect, which I would again, I think Nikhil touched upon this, is I think is in building the next pipeline of future innovators when it comes to students and researchers. I mean, a lot of applications, and I'll build on this tagline of electricity and especially Edison. He was an experimentalist. A lot of the devices that were made came through a series of experiments, a lot of failures, after which you found something that worked reliably, and that made its way into a product. Most of us do not have the time to experiment on a single thing for a large number of years, but students have that aplenty. In that sense, it's a great opportunity to make sure that we have the tools where students and researchers can build as much learning as they can, because they have this 4 years of an undergraduate program, maybe 2+ years of graduate program. Build really high quality research and facilitate the learning so that everyone is updated, and also encourage a culture of of this experimentation, which does not necessarily translate into immediate success. A lot of products came out because people persisted with the failures for a long amount of time because they saw that, hey, there is some light at the end of the tunnel. It just going to take a bit longer, a lot more things that need to be figured out. So I think in these two aspects, I believe is what the future holds for us.
Thank you so much for this, and I wanted to bring this towards the lateral part of it. But since you already touched upon the role of faculty and students, and we all believe that academia plays a very important role in ensuring that we have the technological expertise that's going to be required in future. So I would again like Dr. Shah to continue in very briefly. How do you think the academia should be playing a role? What role they should be playing in empowering this future generation so that they can tackle this new world that's coming up?
I think just embrace it, right? Be updated with a lot of research which is being published. When I was a grad student, the best way for me to be updated back then, it was what was happening at the intersection of material science, electronics, and optics. The best way for me to be updated was to read the research which was published in top-notch journals. I think we got to make that access available to everyone. That's one way. The other is, of course, conferences and a lot more of those, where people can learn from each other. What you can get in, let's say, half a day or a 1 day of immersed learning can take students much further ahead. So I think academia for sure needs to do these couple of things.
Thank you so much. Continuing with this, I know Nikhil also has been working a lot in this domain and has been working with a lot of students, academics as well. So yes, is one leg in the startup side, one on the academic side. So I would like to bring Nikhil into to the stage again and hear his views on what do you think that academia needs to do.
I think the role of academia, in fact, my whole reason to move to India was, the creation of talent. That academia plays an extremely, all of this cannot be, like I said before also, artificial intelligence cannot be fueled without natural intelligence. And the raw material lies with academia. Until we invest in people, we empower them, give them technology. Like, that's why, we run IoT also. Most of our courses are, actually not most, all of them are free. We don't care, we don't want to hold them for anyone. We want more and more people to be empowered with this knowledge. And this is where I think academia plays a lot of role. All the trainers should be upgraded. This is disruptive technology that is coming. If academia is left out, and the thing is, it's a fundamental change in behavior. How you do things in the past, how you used to program versus how AI is going to program is completely different. So mindset shifts take time. They're not easy to come by. So if the wave is already there and academia is then starting, and generally world over academia is a little slower and just for the way things are. So I think for academia, the whole point should be we cannot get as fast as the industries, but catch up, because this whole world depends on us to provide the fuel, provide the talent. Unless we give them the talent, they cannot shape the future of the world. This is why academia is really important, and that's what we are also trying to do.
Thank you so much for those insights and for bringing in what IoT.in is doing as well. So we have spoken about academics, we talked about government, we also talked about in brief, Srikanth talked about business, Vinayak has talked in depth about the startups. And in fact, we have a next panel session coming up after this that's focused totally on the business opportunities and investment opportunities in AI. So I'm not going to focus a lot more on that side. I would like to shift now to Satya, and I would like to know from him what is it that you are exactly doing at OpenCV, and how you contributed to this entire AI wave through the work that you are doing.
So OpenCV is the oldest and the most comprehensive computer vision library in the world. We've been around for 20 years. This project started in Intel, and it was open sourced back in the year 2000. And if you know, the very first self-driving car, which completed the DARPA Grand Challenge in the year 2005, its name was Stanley. The computer vision part was powered by OpenCV. So we have a long history of open source software, but the last 2 years, we started going beyond the library. We started doing open source. We started with courses. We decided that we are going to be the place where people come for all computer vision needs. So We started with OpenCV courses. We are actually running a Kickstarter campaign for our introductory course right now. Then we also did an OpenCV. I mean, the first set of OpenCV courses was also done through a Kickstarter campaign. We raised $500,000 through that Kickstarter campaign. And then last year we did a Kickstarter campaign for OpenCV AI Kit, which is an edge device that can do neural inference, that can run neural networks on the camera itself, and it is also able to perceive depth because it has a stereo camera. And that Kickstarter campaign, we raised $1.35 million. And all of this is going back into the product development, etc. So we are a nonprofit organization, but at the same time, we want to be at the cutting edge. We don't want to sit down there and wait for government funding, or we want some company to give donations. We want to reach out to our community and raise money through them and serve the community so that we bring all these technologies to the world. And lastly, we also did OpenCV AI competition. This is a global competition which is currently in progress, where 1,400 teams submitted the first application, and then 250 teams received OpenCV AI Kit. This is a hardware device. It costs $300. We gave it for free to 250 teams, about 1,200 people around the world, many from India. And now they have this edge device in their hands. This is a cutting edge AI hardware that most people in the world do not have access to. And these people around the world now have access to it. We enable them through our partnership. One of the partners was Microsoft also. So Microsoft and Intel. So basically our mission is to spread AI education throughout the world. And we do it through all these different channels.
Interesting. Thank you so much. And I wish that this 250 kids that you spoke about in near future, the number is 250,000 kids and more. So all the best for all your endeavors that you're trying to promote AI. I want to quickly move on to Mr. Srikanth again and listen to him quickly about what at Tech Mahindra, what are you doing at Tech Mahindra? How are you riding this? And what's in store, what's coming up in your team specifically?
Sure. So as a service integrator, solution integrator, our focus is mainly about solving the business challenges that is coming from the customers. So be it AI or be it any other technology, the prime focus is how can this technology solve the use cases or solve the challenges posed by the industry. That requires a lot of new development. There is technology development, and then there is the application area or the use case development of that as well. So both innovations or both developments need to happen at the same time, so that we have the right technological skill to make solutions and products that can solve the problems of the world. So that's the main focus, be it any technology, AI, ML, blockchain, IoT, or anything that you talk about. It all comes together to solve a business problem rather than just being developed for the sake of being development. So that's our focus in this space.
Yeah, thank you so much. And quickly again, moving to Dr. Shah and wanting to know his line of work and what's happening at Qualcomm.
As a company, we believe we are a systems enabler company, right? System design is at the heart of everything that the company has done over the years, and also we are enabling a lot of applications. So specifically, when it comes to let's say the startups that I have had direct experience working with, we have seen some very interesting applications. I mean, they range from medical technologies like AI-based wound diagnostics or AI-based, say, diabetic retinopathy, to, for example, robotics companies. And these folks are building, let's say, industrial robots to some who are doing, let's say, point A to point B, logistics transports, but they could be doing it, let's say, with human-computer interaction. We have companies which are building, cold chain, vaccine and other transporters. So the number of applications which are being built on AI is actually pretty interesting. What we are also going to see, and I think someone touched upon that, is going to be a blend of devices, where some will be let's say, edge compute only, like AI on the edge, and that's a big thing, right? Where now we can have all these high horsepower applications which require dedicated servers are now going to be done in a small form factor kind of devices. Do something which is going to take eventually the advantage of your network capabilities, with 4G today and soon in India with 5G. So I think that's going to be something to really look forward to.
Interesting. Thank you so much. And I want to move to Nikhil now, because one question that has been at the back of my mind, that there's a lot happening in the AI space we'll be talking about. But we talk about AI technologies and apps and libraries, but then so here's somebody who goes and builds an entire operating system based on AI. So I just want to know why an entire AI-based OS, and what's happening new at ShunyaOS. What can we expect in the times to come from ShunyaOS?
Yeah, the OS piece does sound crazy. Actually, what I think is, I'll keep it short, that every generation of computing had a different OS. If you look at the server industry, and then it came to the mobile, then it came to devices are getting tiny, and even Hemang was telling us that, like people like Qualcomm are innovating at a different scale, completely at a different scale. Those integrated chips are so powerful, so powerful. If you try to put the traditional OS into it and run AI, I think we're going to have a lot of problem, and it has never worked. Every generation of computing has had a different OS. So the demands of generation are different, and I'm seeing an edge, like Hemang was saying, the edge and cloud interface happening at a very tiny footprint. That is exactly what we're trying to achieve with Shunya. At a very low footprint, you should be able to do AI, highly optimized, and integrating all this. This is where I would say, and that's the trend that we're seeing.
Thank you so much. And so we have some audience questions as well. But before we go to the audience question, I want to have one last concluding remark on from all the panelists over here. And that's going to be on the theme somewhat what Vinayak mentioned when he was talking about. And in fact, when I was also reading a few days back, I came across a few articles. There's an article in Forbes magazine where this specifically, and I quote, they said that AI as a technology can be used for both good and nefarious activities, and we need to be vigilant. And then you have April 2019 article in the Hindustan Times titled "The Curse of AI." There's, in general, public's mind also, there's a lot of fear about AI taking over, and AI will be controlling the world and all. But still, I was also one of those who was skeptical until 8:30 a.m. in the morning before this panel. Now I'm not. But still, I see a lot of you are being, almost all of you are being so bullish about this. Quickly, in a 30-second page, if you can, in your concluding remarks, tell us that why we should not be afraid of AI, so that when we leave this panel discussion, we go with a little bit of peace of mind that, okay, AI is not going to run our lives. So I would like to start with Satya.
Sure. When I think about AI, I think about AI as a collaboration between machines and humans, right? We should not be thinking about them as a competition. So when we are collaborating, obviously there is a chance for nefarious purposes it's being used, and we have to be very cautious about that. We have to be very cautious about bias. We have to be cautious about privacy, etc. But in the end, it is like most other technologies which we were afraid of. We were afraid of internet, we were afraid of fire, we were afraid of electricity, whatnot. I fundamentally believe that humans have this, ultimately as humans, we come together, we use things for the good of other humans, right? And we have to be cautiously optimistic about this technology because of the scale at which it's operating. But in the end, it's a collaboration between humans and machines, and it will make the human life better.
Thank you so much. Moving on to Vinayak, if you can quickly share your opinions.
Yeah, I think just like Satya, I'm also very cautiously optimistic. And again, like you have to look at technology as like a knife or sharp object. Right? It can be used for cutting vegetables. It can be used for killing people. It can also be used for doing surgery. And AI is no different from what we've seen in the past. So we need to kind of create frameworks, and I talked about FATML and responsible AI, about how it is used. Eventually, I think it's a technology, and humans, we have to focus on the humans who are actually doing that technology, right? So it can be used for good, it can be used for bad. But technology, in some sense, is if you want to think about technology, I think the other word I would use is amplification, right? It amplifies human ability. Now that amplification can have both negative tendencies, like kind of segregating people at the border, doing surveillance, or for things that really help us. So again, it's an amplification tool, just like any other tool, and I think we have to be careful of what it amplifies. Just like a magnifying glass, it amplifies what we already have.
Thank you so much. So ultimately, yeah, so what I hear is that ultimately the onus is on us as human beings and not on the technology. Dr. Shah, would you come in and share your 2 cents on this?
I mean, I can't say it any better than what Satya and Vinayak have said. It's a great enabler. The future, is going to be pretty exciting, and I think it's going to be a great time of learning, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
Thank you so much. I'm suddenly starting to getting a positive vibe out of this, and I want to move on to Srikanth again. And how do you want to motivate us to be not afraid of AI?
Yeah, I think blame it on Hollywood. Hollywood has been instrumental in scaring us about Terminators and all the judgment days coming out of AI. But I think we are afraid of things if we don't understand them and if we cannot control them. So I think that the effort that is happening towards AI and any other technology is to understand it better and also control it in a way that it is useful to us. So if we keep those 2 strings pulled at all times, I think there's nothing to fear, and let Hollywood be as creative as they want, but it's the common man that needs to benefit from this. So nothing to worry.
Thank you so much. So moving on to Nikhil towards the end, and I want to hear your thoughts on this.
Okay, as a daily tech lead where I see my team working, I would say AI is still pretty dumb. It's overhyped in a way. Even to make it recognize the difference between a cup versus a mug is also actually like a whole lot of data set that you have to. So it's actually, I would still like to stress that we are only innovating fragments of human capability into the computer, and it has a lot of potential. So it is, like Satya also said, these are collaborators, they are our aids. They will help us move things faster. And what I think ultimately it will do is it will push us as humans, and we will realize that how much we have more than what we do. A lot of our own decision making is, and this is also for a reason, that humans like to conserve energy. That's why we want to, things that we have done repeatedly, we don't want to learn new things, because learning new things is consuming energy. But that's not what we are meant for. We have too much power given by universe. So we are all very powerful. The brain is billions of neurons versus AI is very little. So we will all unlock, go to the next level. So we are pushing humanity to the next level, not letting us be a little lazy. And we will all learn. It's a complete, and I agree with Hemang said, that it is a learning experience for the entire humanity. Is going to get pushed, unlock new boundaries. This is where I'm seeing, slowly. And we'll all be happy that, so much we did not know about ourselves.
Thank you so much. That makes me feel so good that it's a history in the making that we are talking about, and we are in some way, or we all are in some way becoming a part of that history in the making. And to sum it up, I'm reminded of what Alan Kay, a very well-known computer scientist, said once, that a lot of people are worried that AI will make human beings feel inferior. But then anybody in his right state of mind should feel inferiority complex even when you look at a beautiful flower. So on that note, I want to move on to the question and answer segment, and we have got some questions that we have received, and let me go through them quickly. Okay, so a question that's very relevant, I want to pick up that question first, and it says that at the University of Southern California, a team has come up with an AI procedure to expedite COVID-19 treatment by analyzing virus mutations. What do the experts feel about the potential of this? So maybe either Satya or Dr. Shah want to come in first, and then somebody else can pitch in.
So I don't know about this particular procedure, but what I want to say is that once you have enough data, some of these patterns can be analyzed. It is within the realm of possibility that once you have enough data, then AI can do better than what humans are capable of doing, just because it can shift through a lot of things very quickly. And just to, Nikhil has mentioned a few times that AI is not as powerful as humans. It is only true when we compare humans, we compare it to human abilities, right? If we compare ourselves to computer abilities, then we are completely inferior. We cannot remember what a single computer can remember in a few gigabytes of data. So it's a complementary skill, right? For example, in computer vision, we can have something looking back. I cannot look back, what's behind me easily without a mirror or something like that, but you can have a computer vision system which is multiple cameras. So my point is that there are places where humans are inferior, and there are places where computers are inferior. And because it's a collaboration, we can put our two things together and make things better. About this COVID, I have the same thought that if we have enough data, we should be able to come up with some good pattern recognition.
Thank you so much. I see Dr. Shah wanted to pitch in.
Sure. So I don't know about the specifics of this particular method, but I can give you an analogy about one of the startups that that we are working with. Now, their specialty was diabetic retinopathy. So meaning they developed this vision-based algorithm to understand eye images and then predict the presence or the likelihood of diabetes. And what they figured, this is during pretty much, I would say, close to a year ago, where they adapted their algorithm that could work on X-ray scans of your lungs. And because of I guess how adaptable their algorithm was, they could predict that with a pretty good accuracy if those lung scans corresponded to those from a patient who was COVID positive or not. And this is something that they made freely available because this was a crisis. It still is there. So I mean, if such a thing is there, I would say make it available for usage and adoption. But I mean, it's got to be verified, right? So before this startup put it out there, they ran, they made available what their results were, with regards to the accuracy and with also regards to the number of training data set that they had used. So they had to also kind of show that, it's not like you put in an input and then it's going to say, hey, here it's positive or not. There's got to be a good deal of rigor which has gone behind it, and you've got to find a way to demonstrate that.
Thank you so much. I'm tempted to move on to Nikhil because you have been working on the ground a lot and helping a lot with this COVID issues. So what do you think about this particular initiative that they're talking about?
Yeah, sorry. So on this initiative, I didn't, the question is about, it's predicting some virus mutation. Okay. So I'm actually, then I'll speak on the experience that I have on the ground. Last year, we did try doing some charity work and mapping hospitals and their demand. I don't know about the mutation. See, all of this is computational where you can, it's all mathematical. So there are two parts to AI. One is the ML part and one is the deep neural network part. The deep neural network part is where you emulate the human brain as good as. And in ML, you have these equations which would also learn and predict like a human would, but with much more ability there. Now, I would actually change the reference to India a little. What I think they are doing is good and these things would help. What I would like to use this chance is to make India aware that we should also record our lack of oxygen that we have today or the hospital beds PIN code wise, so we can predict if there is a new wave. And we should be in this learning mode, or if something is going wrong, let's not avoid it. Let's actually use the chance to collect data, because AI is something, AI is what I learned from AI is, it is that which fails the maximum. The number of time it fails, each time it makes an error, it learns from that error and it improves itself. So good AI is how we should all be. The mutation is one side, but on the Indian side, I think the healthcare, if we can learn from all this that is happening and come up with an AI which will predict better, I think that would be much better. That's what our university should also do.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing your experience on the ground. There's another question that talks about how is AI going to impact or have effect on the content world, especially the news content. And I would like to put the ball in the court of Srikanth here. If you would like to add something, share something on that.
Sure. Just a quick point on the previous topic on COVID research. So you don't have to go up to University of California. Mahindra is doing a lot of AI-based research on COVID and what will be the antidote for that. So it's a tool that can be utilized and it can help. So why not? So coming to the content part, I think one of the biggest advantages of the immediate advantages of AI is how it can analyze and learn and give desired output in the content space, be it text content, speech content, image content, video content, right? And each of these things is a unique use case and a unique business potential area, because this information is everywhere. If you open your phone, you see data, you see numbers, you see text, you see voice, you see images and video. So this set of this types of information is flowing all through the internet and all through all the channels. So AI has a big role to play, and it is already playing a lot of roles, being in say computer vision analytics, like what Satya was talking about. So if you take a camera vision analytics, it does a lot of things other than just providing security coverage, right? It can do consumer analytics, it can do a lot of things on the retail side as far as product availability and things are concerned. If you take speech to text, or if you take just text analysis, there is a lot of work that is happening in chatbot. Like if you open any bank website, you will see a chatbot pop up that will ask you, hey, can I help you with something? And you type a question and it gives you an answer. All those things are text analytics that are driven by AI. So content-wise, be it any form of content, there is a lot of work that is happening, a lot of work that also needs to happen as these models need to become smarter and smarter and responding in a more personalized way to the users. On the movie content, we have already talked about Netflix and others, how they are using AI algorithms to understand what would be your preference, what would be your liking when it comes to watching online movies and shows, what kind of things you like, and it gives you very personalized suggestion. I think that personalization is something that is very unique to AI, because recommendations anybody can do, but personalization to your liking is something that is the next step towards that, and a lot of things already happening in that space. Over to you, Sir.
Thank you so much. That if you could on healthcare side as well, but for now we already talked about in a bit when we talked about the COVID question, we have touched that also. But I want to move on to another question that is more fundamental in nature, and that's is AI going to be scaling the biases or tackling them? I think that's a very important fundamental over there, and I would like to ask this first to Satya. What do you think about this? Because that there was a reference to biases also in the discussion at some point of time.
Yeah, so I mean, if we are not careful, it will scale the biases, right? If we are not careful, we have to be very careful what data we are feeding. It is, it's all pure mathematics. Whatever you feed the machine, it's going to learn it, right? It's just like teaching your kids about various things. They will inherit all your biases if you're not careful, right? That's why you don't teach, you send them to school, they get a more broader perspective of things. So it's extremely important that we are very careful about this. And as the scale of the data goes up, that becomes even more important. For example, it is almost impossible if you look at these very GPT models for language, etc. These things have been trained on millions or billions of word articles, etc., which you cannot have humans go and clearly say that, oh, this is a biased piece of writing or something like that. So if you're not careful and we build these very large models without actually analyzing the data that goes into it, it can actually scale. So that's the scary part, and we have to be very careful not to do that. For small problems, it doesn't make, where we are very careful about looking at the data before putting it in the training set, it is easy to control. But for very large models, it's a real challenge. If you're not careful, it's a real danger that we will end up enhancing the bias.
Thank you so much. I guess you have pretty much covered it in a very brief but very comprehensive way over here. And I have another question that's targeted at Nikhil. So I would like Nikhil to come on. Before I ask that question, if you want to share a few bit on this last question as well about the biases, and then I will move on to the next question.
Okay, on the biases, yeah, I think everyone's already covered. It's more about the data you feed. What is there in the society is going to get replicated a little bit. So the leaders have the onus on it, like Satya did mention, it's on the parent to make sure that your kid does not get a bias. So the leaders who are creating have the onus on them that AI does not amplify, because tech, also Vinayak said this, that tech is an amplifier, so you feed it bias, it is going to amplify it to some different level. So I think that's what I would say, to say the least, that yeah, the leaders have the onus on them to make it more fair.
Okay, so the next question that is specifically targeted to you, Nikhil, is that you mentioned about students catching up and academia catching up with the industry in terms of AI. So are there any suggestions for students who want to catch up, and what should they be doing? Where should they be starting?
So I would say that learn the way AI does. AI does not, how AI learns is it iterates over the data set. It solves a problem, gets an error, learns from the error, improves itself. So just take up problems, try to solve it. The more you don't wait for someone to teach you, that's not how you just take up more and more problems. The more problems you solve and the more times you go wrong, you're going to learn AI. So I think my suggestion to them is just take up as many projects as you can. OpenCV is here, there are projects on the site. Just take up and try to do them. And as you do, there's also our site, projects.iot.in, where you can go and pick up projects and do. So learn by doing is what I would suggest. I have no more questions to you.
Thank you so much. Just add on, because if somebody from your team can share the link of the project website that you're talking about in the chat box, I think that would help the person who's asking the question and others as well who are interested. Moving on to another question, an interesting question that has come up is, what should be the ideal percentage of human intervention when it comes to developing a robust AI? So let me go to Vinayak and see what he has to say about this. What percentage of human intervention should be ideal?
It's very hard to say. Because AI covers such a wide gamut of things, right? But I think coming back to the part when we talk about human intervention, I think as I think other panelists have mentioned, like I think Satya mentioned, right, it's collaboration, right? So it's very hard to say in a team, what kind of collaboration is optimal. It depends on the problem, but I think the challenge is, figuring out what kind of data should be used to maybe train the model, right? Because by its very nature, the kind of data you get, there is some human curation in that, right? So there is inevitably some kind of bias. And eventually there will be bias, because eventually the data also reflects a worldview or a mental model of the person or the set of people who is curating it, right? So it's in the West. It will reflect what are the themes dominant in the West. If you look at Africa, it will dominate. It will dominate those, right? For example, look at the amount of localization that we have in the internet, right? Like even like Satya talked about this huge language models, and basically they have used the entire internet or a large part of the internet as the training. Now that data set is huge, but the challenge is it doesn't reflect the world, right? There are so many indigenous societies, there are so many marginalized communities. There is so much like say Tamil content, there is so much Bengali content, there is maybe even lesser represented language that for which there are no encodings at all. Some of these languages do have, but large set of human language, they do not have any encodings where knowledge can be represented. So what are we losing out is, I think that is the human part, and what can be automated and what can be learned. I think that is the machine part, right? And I think both of them have to kind of work in conjunction. So it's very hard to say, how much of human intervention is different, but generally what I when I look at AI, I always tell like the founders that I work with that don't think about in some sense replacing the human, but think about how we can augment. Right? It's like driving a maybe a train or a car. Right? You need, while you press the accelerator and the machine accelerates and the brake and the machine stops. Eventually, the steering wheel should be in some sense in the hands of you.
Thank you so much. I really like the last point that you mentioned, though you talked about the startups, but I think it applies to everyone who's working in the AI domain. I would just like to another opinion, the same thing, and I want to move on to Dr. Shah and listen to what he has to say on this.
Sure. Yeah, the answer is going to be, it depends on the kind of application. For example, if you're using your phone camera, right, or a selfie, it is doing a fair amount of AI already, and it is making a decision for you that most likely you're going to accept. For example, it's going to look at the natural lighting around you. It's going to apply some kind of effects, before you press capture, and you're okay with it. However, if you're going to say use this to say tag people in a particular photo, then at that point of time it's going to ask you that, hey, is this really you, or is this your friend, with the right name, and so on and so forth. Now extend this to something which is even more critical, like let's say a medical application where something which is simpler might just require some kind of annotation. But if it's providing a diagnosis and all that, then at that point of time, you would actually want someone to kind of double check the results, right? So that's where you'll have this blend. It's going to be, I would say, sort of like an analog scale, or maybe multiple quantization levels, depending on the severity of the application and I guess the right word is probably the outcomes of that decision, right? If it's going to result in, let's say, really costly scenarios, at that point of time, you would probably have more human intervention which is involved. But if it's something which is, going to be, it doesn't add a whole lot of cost or time, at that point of time, I think you'll have less and less human intervention.
Thank you so much, and we'll take the last question over here. And since it's the last question, I'm going to take out my educator hat over here, and I'm going to go in the popcorn style, as they call it these days. So I'm going to throw the question open to all of you, and anybody who wants to answer it. And the question is about a little bit about on the learning phase again. Can you describe the role of Python plus machine learning plus deep learning in the AI world? So there's one more part to the question about where does India stand, but I think that question we already discussed, so I'm skipping that part. And where does AI, this ML, Python, and deep learning stand in the AI world? So anybody who wants to answer this?
I can take it first. I mean, Python is, Python has become the language of scientific computing. So if you want to get into the field of machine learning, AI, etc., this is the language to learn if you do not know any programming language. Even if you know some programming language like C++ or Java or anything like that, it is a relatively easy language to learn because Python was designed for ease of use. It is a scripting language that you can learn pretty easily, right? If you know some other language, maybe it will take you a couple of days. Let's say 7 days maximum to pick it up and get going. Then the second part is that, how do you get started with some of these things? So pick a topic that you're interested in. You could start with OpenCV, learning about OpenCV. We have courses there. We have a lot of free material there. LearnOpenCV.com is a blog that we maintain, which you can go and check out tutorials. And we also have free courses. We also have courses which you can use to get started. The other two libraries that may be of interest to you, one is called PyTorch, the other is called TensorFlow. Again, start with the hello world applications. Start with free material. First you need to convince yourself that you are interested in this field. This is something you want to do. And see whether these tutorials, the free tutorials, can light a spark inside you to learn more. All right, that's the most important thing. Don't be carried away by the hype. See whether you like this field and build some applications based on free tutorials, etc. Try to get an intuition, etc. Use all the free material available before diving into paid courses, etc. So that's my advice. OpenCV, PyTorch, TensorFlow, these three libraries, if you want to get started on, search on the internet and get started. Just pick up some tutorial, whatever comes up. In computer vision, for example, image classification is the hello world application that you need to think about.
Thank you so much for the interest. Anybody else wants to pitch in?
I think I'll take it.
Sure.
Satya did cover the part of where you can, for beginners, I would surely suggest Python. And Python is because there's so much scientific library already built in. You can quickly do things, you can quickly achieve. And as humans, we need to see something that we create to stay motivated to do more. So Python is a good starting point. So one suggestion that I would have is, of course, take up projects and do it in Python, but eventually also focus on C++. And because if you look at a paper where the amount of power that Python consumes versus C++ is in 17x. So if we are not cautious as leaders and we are deploying only Python, we're going to damage the environment a lot, because all of these are going to be power guzzling applications that you have written. So I think in research, and that's what is happening, even PyTorch has for research internally, Facebook also does the same, that they use Python for research because you can do a lot of trials and quickly know what is working, and then when you come into deployment, come into C++. And so I would like to also shift attention towards C++. Don't ignore it as a language. Go is also coming in, but C++ has more libraries where you can do, even OpenCV has C++. So I would suggest that in this whole world, it's not just Python, please also think of C++. It is going to make a better environment for future, that it is less power consuming and still achieves the same result. And we should be mindful of the damage that we do to the environment if we don't write efficient programs.
I'd like to say, go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, if I may quickly chime in. So, since we're talking about languages, two more. One is if it is like statistics heavy and more like visualization and also maybe text processing, maybe then using something like R is also really good. And the other one, which is kind of somewhere between, I think, Python and C++ is upcoming, is Julia. So Julia is also pretty good. It's less closer to the machine as compared to like say something like C++. But it is like easy enough to learn as maybe parts of Python, right? So again, like it's a toolkit that you want to build, but like maybe R and Julia could be the other containers which are there in the landscape as well. And Python being the most dominant.
Thank you so much for pitching and sharing your inputs. And I actually someday I want to get hold of Nikhil and pick his brain, because I'm very curious to know, when they name these languages, why do they call it all this Python and Pandas and Julia? And I don't know why those kind of names, but that's a different question that I'm going to ask Nikhil someday over a personal chat. But thank you so much. At one point, Nikhil did mention about using C++ and being environment conscious programming. I think that's some good work that Nikhil is doing. And I wanted to bring in that question as well, but since we are short on time, I'm going to skip that. But if those who are interested in that side as well, the AI environmental impact of AI, I would recommend that you follow the work that Nikhil is doing, trying to even look at how the codes can be created in such a way that the negative impact on the environment is reduced as much as we can. So with that, I would like to conclude, wind this session entire up, and with my entire learning, because when I came in this morning, I was very skeptical about this entire AI thing, and now to some extent, my mindset has shifted. And what I would like to tell, especially all the audience over here, especially those who are skeptical and afraid of AI, is today we are sitting over here, we have got 5 amazing manifestations of natural intelligence talking about artificial intelligence. And I think we don't have to worry about artificial intelligence overpowering us until that day comes, when 5 AI systems come together, a panel discussion on human intelligence, and they talk about human beings, right? So that's the day we should probably start fearing about. But till that day, I guess we are safe. So with that note, I wish that you all take this learnings with you. It helps all of you to
Would Ismail still run that? Would Ismail still run that session, or would it be an AI Ismail?
Probably it would be an AI clone of Ismail Lagbani. I don't know whether you would call it with the kind of way Python you named. I don't know, you'd call it a giraffe or camel. I don't know. But the way you guys name these things, I'm happy the way it has concluded, though we extended the time a little bit. But that's the problem with natural intelligence. Yeah, AI system would finish dot on time, 10 minutes 10, but we have to show that we are natural intelligence. So we had to somehow show, give a demonstration of that inclination as well. So with that, I would like to conclude this discussion over here, thanking all the panelists over here for sparing their time on early morning being here, all the audience members over here. And last but not the least, I would like to thank myself as well for waking up early in this morning and doing this amazing job of this moderating this panel discussion. So thank you, Ismail Lagbani, for that as well. And we have another panel discussion coming up at 11 a.m. again, so half an hour from now, that's going to talk about investment and startup opportunities in AI. So those of you who are interested, I would request and urge that you join that. Have a good Monday. Don't be afraid. Ultimately, one last comment from me, that natural intelligence was made by God, and artificial intelligence is made by human beings. So obviously something that was created by God is always going to triumph. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you all. Thank you, Ismail. Fabulous moderation.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ismail. We'll see you in networking. Thank you so much. I mean, I need to have a chat. Thank you so much.
Sure, yeah.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. We'll be in
I was born to be free. born to be free. I was born to be free. I was born to be free. I was born to be free. born to be free. I was born to be free. I was born to be free. I was born to be free. free. I was born to be free. I was born to be free. was born to be free. I was born to be free. I was born to be free. I was born to be free. born to be free. I was 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 born to be free. be free. I was born to be free.